God goes blithely on its way as if nothing was happening here on earth? Why? God isn't listening to the voice of man. God said, then you will know the great secret. Are you in a hurry to go? God knows no time, and sometimes I forget. You will know the great secret of the Master. Does the treating or the praying. Not when man whose breath is in his nostril does it. Wherein is he to be accounted of, says Isaiah. Cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostril. Wherein is he to be accounted of? God isn't listening to man's words. If God were listening to man's words, we would not be living in 40 years of war, destruction, famine, all these evils. Men have been praying and praying and praying throughout all of these tens of years that the world has been suffering. Men have been crying up to God, and God goes blithely on its way as if nothing was happening here on earth. Why? God isn't listening to the voice of man. Man must tune himself into the voice of God and then watch what happens to the man who is God-inspired, God-led, God-directed, God-fed. Then you will know the great secret. Are you in a hurry to go? God knows no time, and sometimes I forget. You will know the great secret of the Master. You know, the scene is at the well of Samaria. And he's talking to the Samaritan woman and trying to show her his identity in subtle ways. But it's only when he tells her that he can give her water that she begins to wonder what it's all about. And she reminds him that he has no bucket. I don't need a bucket. The water that I have to give you, if you drink this water, you'll never thirst. This water springs up into life everlasting. That must be a mystery to a person of material sense, the person without spiritual vision. Their water would only be the kind that comes in a glass, jug. But here's a water she knows nothing about. And let us not be surprised at her ignorance. Watch the ignorance of his own disciples right down at the end of the chapter when they discover that their master has missed luncheon, and fearing that he might lose weight. Shall we go to the city and buy you some meat? No. I have meat that ye know not of. Not even the disciples up to that time knew about this meat that I have that ye know not of. Now, you know, in the great transcendental teaching of the Master, you will learn about the wine, the water, the bread, the meat, the blood. You will learn all about these mystical terms that had no significance in the outer realm, and yet when understood within, appeared tangibly without. And so, as you begin to understand that each one of us, because we have the kingdom of God within us, has within our own being all of the supply, all of the health, all the body strength that we will ever need, and we have it now, and that instead of praying for it to be brought to us as if there were a God withholding it, do you still believe in a God that withholds? No. So if we have any lack, stop praying to God for it and get in tune with God and let this abundance that has already been provided you in the beginning, let it flow into expression. You do that through prayer. Any simple, humble form of prayer that is a recognition that the presence within me fulfilled. I am come that ye might be fulfilled. Say I. I am come that ye might be fulfilled. Within you is this divine I that has as its function the fulfilling of you. You don't need anything out here. You don't need anything from anybody. Even if you go to a practitioner, even if you go to a teacher for help, and that's legitimate, it's a sufferer to be so now. Even when you do that, recognize you're not going to a human being with a great understanding. You're not going to a human being who has more spirituality than you have. You are going just to an individual who has made the attunement, who has opened out a way for this imprisoned splendor to escape that our Browning tells us about. And through the proof that you'll get of healing or supplying or whatever you need through the practitioner, you will ultimately be led to see that that is the way for you to do it, that you also have an I within you that is come that ye might be fulfilled. You see, if you keep leaning on a practitioner too long, or a teacher, someday the words, ominous words, will be said that will frighten you. If I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. And believe me, in those few days, 40 of them probably, that they were physically separated from the Master, they must have gone through a real hell until the descent of the Holy Ghost, until the Pentecost, in which the divine Comforter did come. And I said, oh, and we were relying on this of him when we had it all the time. And so it is. It is a legitimate thing in the early days of our spiritual study to turn to a practitioner to help us with our problems, physical, mental, moral, or financial. It makes no difference what they are. And no one should ever be criticized, judged, or condemned for their mistakes, whether they're physical, mental, moral, or financial, because they're all a state of ignorance that we're all subject to, always have been. Now, as a practitioner or teacher helps you above these experiences, and you begin your own study and meditation and consecration to God, you are led to a teacher who may be able, through his or her spiritual development, to lead you on and on and on until they reveal to you this Emmanuel or Christ of your own being. Then is the time for you to walk out on the waters by yourself and let your practitioner or your teacher go on to those still uninstructed in the infinite way, the way of infinity. But always remember, you need to have no hesitancy in drawing completely, fully, on your practitioner, on your teacher, once you are satisfied that they have the spiritual light to share with you. But only remember that you only draw on it as you need it and as a bridge across until you find the teacher who can open up your own soul to you, your own consciousness, and reveal there Emmanuel, God with us, omnipresent, the Christ. Then you come to a place in consciousness where you say, I live, yet not I. It lives within me. It goes before me to make the crooked places straight. It goes before me to prepare places for me. In my Father's house are many mansions, many states of divine, wonderful consciousness, and this Spirit which I have contacted within me, it leads into the fullness of glory, harmony, peace, joy, power, and dominion. Well, now, there is the nature of God as this divine Spirit in you, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. And there is the subject of prayer, a communion with this inner self, this inner being within you, this ability to contact that source of your good, the I within you that has come that you might be fulfilled. Once you have contacted that and realized it, you can travel any part of the globe, any time, and find peace, joy, safety, security, and all of the good things of life. Well, let us see now where we shall go from here. I want to take you one more step on the road to prayer. Somehow I never am satisfied or at rest if I leave the word prayer without this explanation. There is no way to approach God with any hope of answer if there is hate, enmity, animosity in our consciousness. The Master, who probably has given us more on the subject of prayer than anyone I know in all recorded history, has made much of the fact that the nations of the world pray for their friends and relatives, but it profiteth them nothing. That you who are on the spiritual path must pray for your enemies. You must pray for those who persecute you, who revile you, despitefully use you. You must forgive 70 times 7. That means eternally and immortally, time without number. In Hebrew lore, 7 or 70, just like 12, means completeness, immortality, forever. So 70 times 7 means unto the end of all time, forgive, forgive, forgive. And so we are told that if you go to the altar to pray, and there remember that any man has aught against thee, get up, go and make peace with your brother, then return and leave your offering. In other words, it isn't necessary to go out humanly and do anything to anybody or with anybody, but it is necessary to go to a quiet corner and there realize that whatever I am praying for, whatever of good I am expecting in my experience, I wish also for all those who hate me or persecute me or revile me or evilly use me. In other words, I'm perfectly willing for the grace of God to fall on the just and the unjust. I'm willing for the grace of God to bless and benefit all mankind. I have told this before. I will again. It was my pleasure to take 15 boys through the Second World War. They were children of patients and students, and to see every one of the 15 come home without a mar, without a scratch, without a penalty of any kind upon them, and that the mode and method of it was this. Each one of those boys promised, and later told me that they fulfilled the promise, that on awaking each day, they would pray only for the enemy. Not for themselves, not for their families, not for their nation. That their prayer would be exclusively for the enemy. If they had any time left over the rest of the day, they could pray for anybody they wanted. But their early morning prayer or their prayer upon awaking must be for the enemy. And with that sense of no hate, no fear, no revenge within them, they found divine protection. And you can see the reason for that, can't you? Is it possible, do you think, that God at any time was holding enmity against any nation on earth or any people on earth? Why, no. In the sight of God, if we were at all in God's awareness, which I doubt, we were all equally murderers. It didn't make a difference whose army you were in. You were a murderer. If you think not, you're fooling yourselves. 10 Commandments say, thou shalt not kill, but it doesn't say except Germans or Japanese or Russians. And it doesn't say except one today and except another tomorrow. it says, thou shalt not kill. So let us not fool ourselves. No matter whose army we were in, we were equally murderers in the face of the Ten Commandments. But the blessing is this, that in the sight of God, nobody is ever a murderer, since it is an impossibility to kill God, destroy life. And someday, when we awaken out of this dream, we will find all of those whom we have believed to be dead to be just as much alive as we are now. So really, in the sight of God, there is no such thing as punishment for sin. But in the sight of our own violation of our standards, there is the penalty, and those who live by the sword will die by the sword. So always remember this. When we are called upon to fight, we must render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. That part's all right. We'll do our duty, and we will do it with the best and finest of spirits. But let us do it with forgiveness for our enemies, because, you know, we need an awful lot of forgiving at that moment, too. So prayer must be a complete wiping out of our own consciousness of the belief that there are powers, presences, other than God. We must release ourselves from all sense of condemnation, revenge, animosity. Then we come to the throne, pure of heart, and the pure in heart shall see God. Thank you until tomorrow afternoon. Thank you.